The story of Chuck Williams is one of longevity and quality. Case in point, 1964 Look magazine features Chuck and friend David Babbs, East High School grads on their way to CU. Chuck is a point guard, Dave is a quarterback. They remain close friends to this day. That same year, Chuck meets a young woman on campus named Barbara. They are still together to this day as well. Oh, she first noticed him in that Look magazine photo. Longevity and quality. Family, meet Chuck Williams.
It's a family affair. If I could sing it, I would sing it. I would say it much prettier, but we've talked to Miss Barbara Williams in the past, and now we're speaking to her other half, Mr. Chuck Williams. And sir, it is an honor to be in your presence, man. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, and I certainly look forward to our conversations. My wife Barbara mentioned that she enjoyed reminiscing about us getting together and her time up at CU. So yeah, this is great.
Well, let me start from the beginning, my friend. Let's start with where you came from, the people who made you. Talk a little bit about your family history, what you know of it.
Well, I was born in a little place called Pittsburgh, California, which you probably have not heard of. Pittsburgh is East Bay is probably a half hour east of Oakland, and my father was stationed there in the Army. They had a Army facility there, Camp Stoneman,
Hmm.
it was named, and so he had, although he's from the South, he was stationed there at Pittsburgh. He had met my mother in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is where he was stationed at the time, and my mother was working at the postage exchange, and so that's where they met. My mom had previously been married, and she had two sons and two daughters. But my parents they fell in love, and so they got married. My dad adopted my brothers and sisters, and it was quite the transition for them going from Little Rock, Arkansas at that time period to Pittsburgh, California. A very difficult transition for them, as I was told. I was I think they were out there in 42. I was born in 46,
Hmm.
and heard about a lot of things. I was there for 8 years until we moved to Denver. Interestingly enough, Pittsburgh has a history of itself for that area. Um, about 12, 10 to 15 miles away was a facility called Port Chicago.
Hmm.
And Port Chicago was right there off the Sacramento River, and where they brought battleships in to be loaded um, for with munitions and taken out to sea. And that's also where the soldiers would get on board. But it was the military, the Navy people who put the munitions on those ships were predominantly black sailors, and with very little training on what they were doing in loading these ships. And my brothers and sisters always told me the story of being in Pittsburgh when there was a big rumble and plate glass windows were broken. They thought they were being bombed,
Hmm.
and but actually, what happened was that two battleships blew, and about over
Oh wow.
300 sailors, black sailors, died.
Oh wow.
And yeah, they ultimately, it was pretty amazing. I was watching on TV, and they made a made for uh, made for TV movie about it. And so this you can Google it. There's all the history about that. They even, at the time, court-martialed some of the black sailors who they wanted to go back to loading those ships again, and they refused, and they were court-martialed.
Hmm.
But anyway, that's a little. There's a lot more history to Pittsburgh, and that whole area. But ultimately, we moved to Denver because I had some relatives. My aunts and some cousins had moved there from Little Rock, Arkansas, and so my parents um, brought me to Denver in 1954, just a few years ago, and um, there in Denver, I think I was 8 years old at the time. So I went to elementary school there, junior high school, Smiley Junior High School at the time, and then ultimately East High School. Um, so I'm so I'm an East High Angel.
So you're another one of those. There's such a wonderful history of East High School and folks like yourself and so many others who came out of there. It's like that was like it seemed like that was the black high school in the city, if not the whole state.
Well, it really wasn't a black high school. It was
Mm,
Manual was more
mm,
a lot more black students there.
hmm.
East was probably, I would say, maybe 15%
Wow.
blacks were at East High School at the time. Um, if you know anything about the school, it's really a pretty iconic high school, not only
Mm,
from the architecture, which is really very incredible, but the people that ultimately went to East High School. Matter of fact, there's a 150-year anniversary of East being in existence,
hmm.
100 years of it being in the school where it currently is. And there's a documentary that's being put together right now. I was interviewed about a week ago about my time at East, but the people that went to East is really a who's who of entertainment, music, politics, science.
Hmm.
Um, Hattie McDaniel went to East, the first black lady to win the Academy Award for in Gone with the Wind. I mean, you have astronauts, you have Don Cheadle, you have Earth, Wind, and Fire
Hmm.
graduates, and so it's really an interesting high school with a great history to it.
What was it like for you going there as a student? What was the environment like? What was the city like back then?
Well, I grew up in Northeast Denver,
Hmm.
and there were other guys that grew up with me that went to East High School.
Hmm.
Um, it you know my I was very much into two things, maybe three. I was into music at the
Oh,
time. I grew up starting in sixth grade with music lessons with playing the saxophone.
hmm.
And then I got into sports. I got into all playing all the sports, football, basketball, baseball, even running a little, running a little track. Um, and interesting enough, also during that time period, my when I was in junior high school, I belonged to a local marching band, concert band called the Junior Police Band,
Mm.
and we marched in Memorial Day parades. We had concerts out at Lakeside, and we also were selected when I was 15 years old to go back and play in President Kennedy's inauguration.
Mm.
And so our group traveled back there, which was a great experience. Um, and also when I was at East in band, I think it was maybe 63, a monitor comes in and whispers something to the band instructor, and later the band instructor informed everybody there that President Kennedy had been assassinated. And so, as we all know, where you were during that time period.
Right.
So there was a connection there, but music. I was in the stage band, and sports just really took over. I
Mm.
mean, one sport went to the next. Football in the fall went right into basketball, went right into baseball, and so a lot of times we didn't even, I mean, we were always coming home when it was dark.
Mm.
And, but that had a tremendous impact on me. Another thing that was going on, obviously, dating, the mixing of white, blacks,
Mm.
uh, dating was really a taboo of white girls. But there were some of us that we got together, developed friendships, and we did date. But the way we would date with some of the guys friendships that we developed on the teams, they
Mhm.
would go and actually pick up our dates, and
Oh my goodness.
we would meet up later, go to the movies or whatever, and they would take them back home. So as I say, my involvement with music and sports and that it was quite the time period. I do have
Hmm.
one instance that did take place. I mean, it wasn't all peaches and cream going to East. There was one incident that I brought up, I thought about recently and even called this guy that was the center on the team, J.R. Craig is his name.
Hmm.
And I asked him, did this really happen? And what happened was we had played a preseason game against, I can't remember who, but
Hmm.
apparently we and we dominated in sports at that time period. But apparently we didn't act right. We didn't act the way you're supposed to act. Maybe we were, um, bragging about things. I
Hmm.
don't know. It's not quite the same as it is today, but
Uh,
I do remember vividly the next day, our white coach, did sit us down. He told us to sit down in this small gym that we practice in. And the very first thing that came out of his mouth was very loud, very powerful. You guys acted like, and big N word.
oh my goodness.
And we're high school kids, and we were a bit in shock. Our coaches and teachers, they were everything. They
Hmm.
were everything to us, and with the authority that they held, um, and so that was quite the shock. We didn't respond. It wasn't a time period in which that was okay, I guess.
Hmm.
But it came and went. Our fellow teammates who were white really did not say anything to us that I can recall. So it
Hmm.
just sort of came and went. But I do remember that vividly.
Hmm.
Um, and and there was
Around what year was that roughly? Do you remember?
that had to be 63.
Okay.
It had to be 63. And another incident took place when, I was in dating
Mhm.
one of the white girls there. Her mother was a teacher at East.
Oh.
And so she approached the coach, um, and it was our sophomore coach. She approached our coach to have him talk to me about not dating her daughter.
Hmm.
And so apparently that happened. I don't remember, but apparently that did happen. And the reason I know is because many years later, that same coach that was our sophomore, he was at least 85 years old. He had kept in
Hmm.
contact with a few of the guys that he coached at that time, and he wanted
Hmm.
to have a lunch over at his house.
Hmm.
And and they asked me to come. And so I said, well, sure, I'll come. And after we ate, we got caught up and we ate. I had to go. And the coach said, Chuck, I want to talk to you. And this literally, he had to be close to 90 years old. I mean,
Hmm.
this was, and he wasn't in great health, but he pulled me aside and he looked up to me and he said, "I want to apologize to you."
Mm.
And I said, "Well, about what?" He said, and the first thing he said was that white girl. I came to you and I asked you not to date her because her mother approached me, and I just want to apologize to you." And that was extremely powerful. I mean, for him to, I had not seen him in many years. For
Mhm.
him to hold on to that and
Yeah.
to say that to me was really, really pretty incredible. He had gone on to become a head coach at North High School, and even he was a head coach at Manual High School in football. And that
Hmm.
was the last time Manual won a city championship in football, was when he was coaching. So he had other experiences with young black kids at that time period, which I think helped change his mind about a lot of things.
Wow. Now, what did you think you were going to be? Did you think you would be an athlete as a pro? Did you think that would be your life going forward when you were
No,
still in high
not
school?
not professionally. I would come home on Sundays after church, and the Boston Celtics would be playing, or
Hmm.
I'd see Oscar Robinson playing, and I always, thought about uh, how good of players they were. But
Hmm.
no, I didn't. When in high school, I really didn't think about that.
Hmm.
I ultimately, was given a scholarship to CU to come and play up there. But even at CU, I didn't really think about that until my senior year.
Hmm.
And while our team was not the best team in the world, I played pretty well and got to be noticed. And so that's when my thoughts to moving
Hmm.
on and having that as a career. Now, I thought I was going to be, I
Hmm.
thought I was going to be a high school coach.
Really?
That's yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was thinking. And so, we were, if that's what you wanted to be, we were steered in the direction of well, get your physical education degree and move into that area. And so when I went to CU, that's what I majored in. I got my
Hmm.
degree in that, and I even got a master's in it later on,
Hmm.
uh, but never used it. Never
Never
used
became a
it.
coach, huh?
Never became a coach. No.
Hmm. Well, talk about why CU? I mean, were there other offers, or was that just a place that was close to home, or when it came time to,
I,
you know?
you know, I, yeah, I didn't receive that many scholarship offers to tell you the truth. Obviously, DU, I wanted me to offered me a scholarship. CSU offered me a scholarship. The schools around here, but small schools out of state. That was about it. And if I was going to choose any college, it was going to be CU. Staying in state, and CU was the dominant school. The basketball team was very well. I mean, a great group of guys that were up there at the time.
Hmm.
So yeah, so CU was the school of choice for me.
Talk about your first time in Boulder, and I'm assuming you probably were up there as a youngster, or was college the first time you saw the campus?
I probably was up in Boulder maybe once or twice,
Hmm.
maybe. Um, that it's really the an amazing scene coming up over the hill and looking down into the valley, and there's the mountains that are right there. The setting is just gorgeous. But CU Boulder was only 30 miles away from Denver,
Hmm.
but it was like going cross country because it's a totally different setting there, predominantly white.
Hmm.
The only students up there at the time were really athletes, and there weren't that many black athletes up at CU. And so, but CU was definitely the choice of schools, and
Mhm.
I was really pleased to be up there and to get a scholarship to be paid for. I don't know if I'd have gone to college if I hadn't received that scholarship.
Mhm.
Tuition, room and board, eating on training table.
Mhm.
Um, Interestingly enough, my high school teammate, Dave Babbs, who
Mhm.
was a great athlete himself, got a scholarship to play football up there. And Dave and I had been there, Look magazine at the time, and that which no longer exists, but
Mhm.
Look magazine was a national magazine, and they had a big article on the graduating classes at that time in 1964. I guess it was the largest amount of students, maybe two, that were going to school or going to
Mhm.
college from high school. And so
Mhm.
they had a big article in the magazine. And for some reason, they came and came to East High School, and Dave and I were chosen, seeing that we were going to CU together. We were chosen to have a picture in the
Mhm.
magazine and also a little blip about us rooming together.
Mhm.
So my first year, Dave and I roomed together up at East High School.
That's funny because she was I talked to yeah, she was Barbara. And she
I
said, "Yeah,
mean,
that's the." She said that was her quote introduction to you was seeing you in that magazine.
yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah, I like to say that she was stalking me. Yeah,
then she saw, hey, he's a star. So I
yeah.
mean, but that attention did that attention follow you to Boulder, or were you just another guy on campus, or how were you received when you got there? After all the write up and everything.
Oh, I was just another guy on campus. Matter of fact, they brought me up early, a couple
Mm-hmm.
weeks early,
Mm-hmm.
before school started to room just for a couple weeks with one of their star football players, Wilmer Cooks.
Mm-hmm.
He was a big fullback out of Waco, Texas, and who had been recruited by a lot of the schools around the country, in particular UCLA. And they were still knocking on the door to him,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted me to room with him just to, you know, have another black face there, just sort of. I didn't think of it as keeping an eye on him, but
Uh,
I think that was something that they wanted me to do. And ultimately, Wilmer did flee to UCLA,
okay.
but somehow they were able to bring him back, and he became just a great fullback, and we've talked to this day.
Hmm. Now, I said there weren't that many of you on campus at the time. So, yeah, when I went there, I was there maybe a decade or so after you guys, and there was maybe 700 or 800 of us. How, I mean, how did you all come across each other? Did you seek each other out? What was it like just being on that campus of what maybe what 15 or 10, 15,000 kids, and you're kind of it.
Yeah, yeah. My a friend of mine had come up to see you, Gary Jackson,
Hmm.
and as you said, uh, you, I met my wife Barbara there my second year. I was a sophomore, she was a freshman, and we met a very first day of registration,
Hmm.
and met her going across the street up on the hill to Talagi's. We were having lunch up there, and she was with a young lady, a young black lady that actually I had dated that in Denver, and she had met her. Um, she was she was looking for someone else that was black on the camp that she could connect with, and
Hmm.
and she saw her, and they got together and had gone to lunch. And anyway, this young lady introduced Barbara to me,
Hmm.
and it seems like we've been together ever since, which is going on 58 years.
Wow, go on now. But
But but yeah, my sophomore year, I roomed with Gary Jackson, and
Mhm.
another a longtime friend now, Sonny Flowers, who was unfortunately has passed away
Yeah.
within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But we the three of us roomed together. I ate on training table, and they always used to get on my case for not bringing some of the steaks home that that I was that I was able to that I was able to eat. But yeah, our friendships up there were a few other guys that were on the football, basketball teams, which weren't that many.
Mhm.
But I have to say that I developed friendships with the guys that I played with basketball wise, which
Mhm.
some of which I've kept, they're friends of mine to this day, and they're right up the hill to Boulder right now.
Now, were you there when Philip Hart came through, or did he come in after you?
Phil went to East High School,
Hmm.
and he was a senior when I was a sophomore.
Okay.
So yes, Phil was up there. Um, we couldn't you couldn't play as a freshman, and
Right.
that's when Phil was playing, and so we
Okay.
never did play together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he came before you did, not after. Okay.
Yes, he came before me.
Um, Now you said your major was in
Physical
physical
education.
education.
Yeah.
Um, what were you think? Were you still thinking about being a coach at that time, or?
I was still thinking about being a coach,
Hmm.
but then but then, as I mentioned, in my senior year, I had a great senior year, and Philadelphia drafted me
Really?
right out of college. I was like the fifth pick, but actually it ended up being their second pick, and they brought me out to Philadelphia to play that summer and play in the Baker League,
Hmm.
and I I roomed with their number one draft choice, a guy by the name of Shaler Halliman,
Okay.
and and our coach during the Baker League, and the Baker League was made up of pros from the East Coast
Hmm.
and some of the best amateurs on the East Coast. The coach this team that they put me on was John Cheney. I don't know if
Oh,
that name
Temple
rings a bell,
University. Temple
but John,
University.
that's exactly right. Who's in
Yeah.
the Basketball Hall of
Hall
Fame
of Fame.
as a coach. He was my coach then,
Hmm.
and played very well that summer. Had
Hmm.
write-ups of how I was going to make the team. Blah 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 blah. Philadelphia had just won the world championship with Wilt Chamberlain.
Hmm.
And so I was looking forward to that. But during that summer, the end of the summer, they traded Chamberlain. And when they traded Chamberlain, they got five players, one of which was an all-star guard. Archie Clark was his name,
Hmm.
which took my place.
Oh.
He he
Oh.
he took the place that I was supposed to have, and from there, and I was pretty upset with that whole scenario. Baltimore, the Bullets at that time,
Hmm.
they wanted me to come try out with them, but I said no. That was enough, and I drove back to Boulder, where my wife Barbara was, and went back to school. The school gave me a fellowship to go on and study, and so I got my master's there. And
Hmm.
I also at the time they got me. I don't know if it wasn't a it was somewhat of a counseling job at Baker Hall, the
Hmm.
dormitory there.
Hmm.
And so I was over a bunch of resident advisors and some students and this, that, and the other. And that was a good experience working with them. But I kept playing with AAU basketball,
Hmm.
and so a year later, I got my degree, and Philadelphia asked me to come back and try out with them. So I did. They were going to offer me a contract, but the ABA, the American Basketball Association, Pittsburgh, wanted me
Hmm.
to come try out. And after the very first day, they gave me a no-cut contract. So that was
Oh,
my
Pittsburgh it is.
there you go. So that's my start in the pro ranks.
Well, let me say, yes, that's the ABA with the red, white, and blue basketball, the 3-point line, and
That's
that had to be
exactly
that had to be an interesting world because the game was not the same as the NCAA no dunk NBA
right.
style.
Right.
What was that like playing in a wide open league like that?
It was an experience for me, and it was a great. I was really happy that I was able to go and play in the Baker League because it was much like playing that East Coast basketball, which is more up and down,
Hmm.
freewheeling. That was the ABA, and a lot of interesting characters that played in the ABA. But there a lot of great talent.
Yeah.
It was a league that in the NBA at that time period, it was really a slow down big
Hmm.
man's game. The centers
Hmm.
get the ball in the middle and that kind of a game. Our game was more guard and small forward dominated. It was up and down, and that's where the 3-point line uh, started. And as you know, as today, if you don't have 3-point shooters, you're not going to
You're
win.
not going to win. And look, I'm a Denver kid, so watching Jokic throw 3-pointers up from the other free throw line is pretty exciting. I have to
Yeah,
admit.
yeah, that's exactly right. But no, it was, and the ABA as time went on, it only lasted 9 years
Hmm.
until 4 teams came into the NBA. But
Hmm.
it improved every year, and then to the point where they started drafting and signing and were able to pay
Hmm.
somehow some of the better kids coming out of college.
Right.
David Thompson,
Hmm. Julius
Artist
Irving.
Gilmore,
Yep.
Julius Irving, George Gervin. I mean,
Irvin.
goes on and the NBA took note of that. Um, and it was just a very colorful league. It's unfortunate that they didn't when they consolidated the leagues. The 4 teams that came in was the Denver, the Pacers, Indiana, San Antonio, and the Nets.
Remember, the
They,
Denver was
they,
actually the Rockets before, but they had to
it
switch the
was the
name.
Denver Rockets, and I played with the Denver Rockets,
Hmm.
and they let me go in an expansion draft to San Diego, but ultimately I came back to Denver to play with them with the Denver Nuggets.
Mm.
And on that team was David Thompson, Dan Issel, Bobby Jones, all three of which are in the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. But one of the things that they didn't incorporate, they did the they brought the guys in. They did not use the red, white, and blue basketball.
Right.
And I thought that was a mistake, and a lot of people thinks that was a mistake because that, from an entertainment standpoint, you could see that red, white, and blue
Hmm.
ball all over the arenas. You could see the
Hmm.
spin of it. The
Yep.
guys like using it because it was helpful in shooting. If you got in a little bit of a slump, you'd look at the spin of the ball and see if that was a little different. But they didn't incorporate that. They're
They also had a weird foul rule too, where you didn't foul out, but if you got like the seventh or whatever foul, the
Yeah,
other team would
six
shoot extra
fouls. You
free
could,
throws, or yeah.
yeah, that's exactly right. You could have six fouls, and then it went into free throws. Yep, that's exactly right. No, it was, and they also started getting some of the players from the NBA to jump over to the ABA. Rick Barry
Very.
a main guy that jumped in, and as everybody knows, Rick was the only guy to lead the NC2A in scoring, the NBA in scoring, and the ABA in scoring. Yeah,
And he had the most unique free throw shot I've ever seen.
underhanded,
Underhanded.
and he was a great free throw shooter.
Hmm. I'm
But
surprised nobody else picked that up.
exactly. Well, Will Chamberlain tried it. Will Chamberlain had an underhand, but he wasn't quite as effective as
No,
Rick.
no. Now, when was your last year in the ABA? Because there was so much great history there, and you know,
78.
78. So you were there when
70 to 78.
So you were there for the first slam dunk contest. Were you on that team that played the All Stars that last year?
Yeah, I
What
was
was
on that.
that?
Yeah, I was on that. I was on that team, and which we won the game.
Yeah,
But the of note was the half, the half court. Well, the half court. Julius the dunk contest, and Julius dunking from the free throw line.
yeah.
Yeah, and
No,
seeing that crowd of, they actually broke the fire code with the amount of people there. That's the
wow.
old McNichols Arena, which held
Yep.
17,000. Well, they got 18,000 people in there.
Now
So
everybody's. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, that's okay. It went nuts. They went nuts.
Well, I was at CU watching that, and all the guys we were in Arnett Hall,
Oh,
and we are watching it. We sort of took over Arnett Hall to watch,
oh,
and to
that's
this
Arnett is
day,
where I stayed.
oh, okay, yes, you know the lounge.
Yeah.
Well, we were convinced that if David hit that 360, he would have won that not to die. To this
Right.
day, we're convinced that because he missed that 360, he didn't win.
Yeah, exactly. But that's something. I don't know if you've ever been to a free throw line in a gym and
Yeah,
seen where that rim is. You have to be in the air a long time
long time, a
at,
long time.
at a certain height. But no, that was some great memories, and great
Man,
memories of God, some of the coaches that I
yeah.
played. I played for a few different teams, and that's the way the ABA was. Everybody was traded all the time, and so I was coached by Casey Jones in San
Mm-hmm.
Diego, who's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He
Mm-hmm.
coached the Celtics with Larry Bird.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Hannum, who'd won a
Yep.
world championship with Philadelphia, and also Larry Brown,
Larry
who
Brown.
I played with the Denver Rockets. He was a player, and Larry was ultimately my coach when they went to the Denver Nuggets. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so and they're, you know, I'm I was chosen a few years ago to go into the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame, which is really a great honor. And this
Congratulations.
year, Larry Brown has been chosen to go in, and so Larry is going to be there, which will be really interesting to see him after all these years. I'm
Wow.
really looking forward to that.
Okay. Now, I have to ask you this question. You being a hoop guy, the 20th Street Gym in Denver. What, talk about it, man. Because what I was told, if you didn't have any game, you couldn't walk in the door.
Yeah, that was you certainly wanted to win because there were other guys wanting to come in and play, but it was that a lot of great basketball was played in that very small gym, and of note, the ceiling height was not that high, so you could not if you couldn't have that high an arch on your shot.
Oh,
So, but
no
yeah,
rainbow jumpers, huh?
that's exact. That you're right. No, that's a lot of great basketball was played there. A lot of great basketball was played on outdoor courts. Barrett Elementary School
Mhm.
here in Denver. That was a place where a lot of guys would assemble to play also. But 20th Street that's a lot of history there.
Yeah. So, you've gone through, so you've gone to the NBA, which we've sort of transitioned you out of school. What happens now? The NBA, the ABA career is over. Did you go to the NBA at the end of that, or were you done?
I when the leagues consolidated and I was with the Nuggets, and I had started on all these teams that I played with, but uh, midway through the first year of the NBA, I was traded, and this is a story, but I'm not going to go into it. I was traded to, of all places, Buffalo Braves.
Buffalo
They had,
Braves.
yeah, they had an NBA franchise there. Bob McAdoo had
Oh yeah.
that played there. They had some great teams there. I was traded mid season to Buffalo, New York. So you can only imagine going from Denver, Colorado to
Hello,
Buffalo, New
Buffalo, New
York,
York.
which I thought I knew all about snow. Well, back there, snow's a whole different ball game. And so, but there were some interesting players on that team too. I mean, Ernie DiGregorio, who
Oh
had been
yeah,
Rookie of the Year, John Shumate, Randy Smith, Adrian Dantley.
that's right.
That was his rookie year with Buffalo. So there was a cast of characters, and I was there for a couple years, and then didn't call it a day. I my knees started to give out. I was hoping to not have to start and not play that much.
Hmm.
Tiny Archibald was there when I came, and I was looking to be the third guard to come off the bench, and which was great for me. Play 10, 15 minutes, something like that.
Hmm.
But in preseason, Tiny tore his Achilles tendon, and that
Hmm.
that sort of sealed it for me. I had to start, and then that was enough was enough. So I called it a day.
How would you, looking back now, how would you rate the career? Did you enjoy doing it? Was it fun for you those years,
It fun.
or was it a job?
It was a job. It was doing something that I loved, that I thought I was pretty good at doing. Looking
Hmm.
back at it now, the players that I played against, the guys that played were teammates, and then the coaches.
Hmm.
That was one heck of an experience. I mean, that was the height of you can't get any higher than that. You're playing professionally on a big stage against a lot of, I'm watching I don't know if you watch the Celtics City. It's a
Hmm.
documentary that's
Hmm.
on now on I think it's HBO.
Hmm.
It's a deep dive in the history of Celtic basketball.
Hmm.
And looking at that, I'm looking at guys that I played against, and coach that coached me. Casey Jones
Yeah.
was in there. And so, to as you asked me, looking back, I've got great memory. I would not do anything differently when it
Hmm.
when it comes to when it comes to my playing career. I felt very fortunate to be able. There was a lot of people, a lot of guys that wanted to play professionally and play on that at that level, and so I feel blessed about that.
Now you didn't become a coach, so what happens after the NBA?
Well, I had maintained my relationship with the team doctor for the Denver Nuggets at
Hmm.
that time, and we had talked about. He had brought this idea of this business of a sports medicine facility, and they didn't have those at the time, and in freestanding facilities, they had it in hospitals, but
Hmm.
they thought that with my background and growing up in Denver, and my history in Denver, from a marketing standpoint, that would serve it well. So we opened up a sports medicine clinic called SCORE, Sports
Hmm.
Conditioning and Orthopedic Rehabilitation. And as I
Hmm.
said, he was the Denver Nuggets team doctor at that time period.
That wasn't
And
Chopper, was it, or was it someone else?
no,
Not,
Chopper's
not.
the trainer.
Okay, gotcha.
Chopper
Okay,
was the trainer. Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Dave he was an orthopedic surgeon.
okay, gotcha. Okay.
And so my task was to go out and market, talk to doctors, physicians, and we got a lot of publicity. It really helps to be a homegrown and to come back to I live from coast to coast, but always
Hmm.
Denver was my home. And so
Yeah.
we had lots of publicity, be it on, written or TV or radio. We even had our own on KOA sports talk program on talking about rehabilitation. And
Hmm.
so that I think I was involved with that for 10 years, and got a little tired of doing that. And I'm one in which, I'm always looking around for things. And I got into the environmental industry.
Hmm.
Um, and I got into it through a friend. And he was telling me that there's a new industry that was really starting to open up, and it was called asbestos abatement. removal of asbestos. And I didn't even know what in the heck asbestos was at the time,
Mm-hmm.
period. But I did my background on it, my research on it, and it was an up and coming, they had used this material for centuries in all kinds of facilities. And for what it was a fireproofing. Well, they used it for a number of different things,
Mm-hmm.
but they found that it was extremely hazardous. It was a carcinogen. And so that began the removal of it and all over the place. And so we put this
Mm-hmm.
company together, and I learned about it, Dawn respirators, the suits. We we started off by doing residential work, and
Mm-hmm.
we do the work ourselves. And it's quite extensive in the removal of asbestos.
Mm-hmm.
But our company grew to be a fairly large company. We became a regional company, and
Mm-hmm.
probably the largest in the state at that time period. And in this, I mean, we had projects in all the military facilities, Lowry Air Force
Mm-hmm.
Base, Fitzsimmons, Rocky Mountain Arsenal,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere and everywhere at that time period. And we even did work in New Mexico. We had an office there and an office up in Wyoming. And so, and that got to be a recognized company. We were Small Business of the Year regional, and
Mm-hmm.
went back to DC and received our awards back there. So I did that for about 15 years, and that was, I always bet on myself, and even with doing new things,
Mm-hmm.
you do the research, you say you can, this is something you can do, and you take a leap of faith and you do it.
No, and that's how, let me slow you down right here. People don't, Rich, we don't have it. People don't talk about asbestos today because it really doesn't, for the most part, exist. How serious an issue was it? It seems like everybody's house or building had asbestos in it at the time because nobody understood the danger of it. But how prevalent was asbestos when you guys started?
It was everywhere. It
Mm-hmm.
was, I mean, from a commercial standpoint, from a residential standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
all the houses had it, boiler systems,
Mm-hmm.
tile, mastic, the glue that held the tile down, in ceilings, in decorative spray, in
Mm-hmm.
fireproofing. I mean, it was used everywhere, in brakes,
Mm-hmm.
brake pads had asbestos in it. Yeah, people were exposed all over the place. I mean, there's nowhere you could go where you weren't exposed. And then they found that it was a carcinogen, and so, and you would think, I mean, our company started in '85. You would
Mm-hmm.
think that all of it is gone. It is still active. They are still
Really?
taking down buildings with asbestos in it. Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
It was used that extensively.
So people really thought, I mean, it really thought that was like the next thing or the wave of the future was to having this material. Then we found out, no, not so
Right.
much. And I mean,
Exactly.
and the process for removing it, as I understand, is not it's not exactly like you just walk in and pull it out. There's a real process to
Oh
removing
no,
this.
no, no, no. There's respirators. You got to have containment. There's facilities of there's a clean room, there's a shower room, there's a dirty room. You have to go when you're coming out. You have to shower out, remove all your things that you were protective materials that you were wearing. No, and
Hmm.
it is a tough business. A tough business.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people appreciate what you did because yeah, you probably saved a few lives along the way.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I mean,
I never thought I would find myself in some of the places that where they they had asbestos. Yeah, but in crawl spaces,
Oh
I've
wow.
yeah, crawling around and looking at potential work, and over at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal where they manufactured sarin nerve gas and mustard gas, and they had cleaned that up, but asbestos was there, and we worked all around those facilities.
Wow. Now, you said that you did it for a while, and was that was there a next step, or are you into the where are you? Where are you now? What was because you have really you've had a lot of interesting stops along the way.
Yeah, well, that wasn't my last stop. I, we finished up with the business, and I wanted to do something else, but do something a little different. And I thought about what that could be. And I started thinking, I'd like to talk to people. I'm interested in hearing about people, meeting people, and
Mm-hmm.
I like to drive for some odd reason.
Hmm.
And so I bought a small, out of the blue, I bought a small town car service,
Oh,
and very small. And we had, I don't know, three or four cars and guys that would drive. But I literally, I was one of the drivers. So
now
it was mostly
the
business.
stretch cars, or
No, we didn't do that. It's just the big
okay,
Lincoln Town cars at that time. And so
okay.
it was mostly picking people up, going back and forth to the airport, picking them up at their businesses or their residences, and um, and so did that. And and there was a couple of things that sort of stood out during that time period. I mean, I lost money doing that. I'll be very honest with you, but I lost money doing that. But there were two instances that stood out. One of which was some people that we had known that were working for the city government at that time called me up and asked if I would pick up this guy that was coming in from Chicago,
Uh-huh.
and he's going to be doing some fundraising for Ken Salazar, who was running for the Senate at
Mm,
that time. And I said yes. I didn't think anything about it. So I went out, and I had a big SUV. Went out to the airport, and a small jet comes in, and
hmm.
there were about three or four people who got off and got in. One of which was a young black guy, good looking guy who sat next to me. And we didn't do a lot of talking. I took him around to various places, and happened to notice that he would wow people wherever he was speaking.
No.
And then when he'd come back out, he'd sneak around the corner and he'd light up a cigarette, and he'd smoke that, and then get back in the car. And there was a news outlet out of Chicago that was following him around. Well, I found out that this same guy had wowed the Democratic National Convention with this speech, and they said he
Hmm.
could be the next president. Well, I sat next to Barack Obama for a full day.
Oh, goodness. When you said you talked about the cigarettes, I said, "Oh God, it could be him."
Yeah, and I wasn't into politics. I didn't know too much about it. So,
Hmm.
and looking back on it, if I wish I had at the time, knowing that he was a basketball junkie, I would have brought up about playing a little ball, and
Yeah.
an interesting conversation.
Oh, he might have taken you to the gym, man. He was known to
Yeah,
do that.
that's that's exactly right. But then the NBA had their All-Star weekend here one time,
Hmm.
and they asked me if we could have somebody at one of the hotels to take some of the guys around that needed, restaurants, this, that, and the other. So I
Hmm.
said, yeah, I didn't do it because I was participating in some things.
Right.
Well, after that was done, one of our guys came back to me and said, this lady, her name is Gail, said that, who's a good friend of Oprah's, said that
Mm.
she really enjoyed it and she was going to tell Oprah about us. And
Yep.
so I said, yeah, sure. Well, about a month later, representatives for Oprah called up, said they were going to be in town for the weekend. She was doing something at the convention center, and wanted us to take her entourage around. I
Wow.
didn't drive. I don't know what the reason was, but our guys took care of her and our entourage for the weekend,
Mm.
and apparently they were all given $100 bills as a thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was a couple instances that sort of stand out in my time with being a driver.
I mean that you
Yeah,
where where
I've
where
done a lot of stuff.
where are you now in life? Um, you like you
Well,
have
you
that
know
look like
what?
this brother who's just, I have done some things and I have had a good time and
You
I
know
have been
what?
blessed, you know?
That's not my that wasn't my last thing.
Oh, there was another rodeo.
There was another rodeo. Well, I when our company we closed our company down, our
Hmm.
people that worked in the asbestos industry went out and with different companies.
Hmm.
And a few of those people went to this company called Belfour Environmental.
Hmm.
I didn't know anything about Belfour, but one of our guys mentioned that to the manager that they ought to come and talk to me about coming on board and working with for Belfour. I later found out that Belfour is a environmental was a company, a part of Belfour Property Restoration, which is the largest disaster restoration company in the world.
Hmm.
Didn't know anything about that, but I was open to talking to the manager, and after the first day, he hired me to be um, their marketing manager, their national marketing manager,
Hmm.
which took me. I was with them for 10 years, and it took me from coast to coast, and always with disasters. You look at the hurricanes that take place. Belfour is there. Tornadoes that take place. Belfour is there. Monsters flooding.
Hmm.
Belfour is there, and always there's potential for environmental issues that needed to be dealt with.
Hmm.
Belfour did everything. I mean, I'm telling you, and they still do it. They're still out there. They're all down south where they're having those tornadoes
Oh yeah.
and rain. They're down there too. But that took me into another direction of looking at environmental issues um,
Hmm.
for our environmental company. So yeah, I did that for 10 years, but and that was it.
Well, let me stop. What was it about doing that kind of work? Um, that was interesting to you. You know,
Well, it was environmental, and that was a world that I knew one side
hmm.
of it. But
Hmm.
Balfour Environmental did much more than that. They
Hmm.
got into the chemicals
Hmm.
and a lot of semiconductor
Okay.
work with chips. You know,
Hmm.
that's not a clean world. The making of those chips, using a lot of extremely dangerous chemicals. And
Hmm.
so one of the things that our company would do would be cleanup in these areas. They had that capability.
Hmm.
Um, but it was a bit exciting. I'd be called out and sent to. I was in Nashville when they had those major floods
Hmm.
there. Joplin tornadoes when they tore up that cities.
Yeah.
South Carolina. I was down there. In doing marketing. I was throughout New York and down all the way south into the Florida area. I was anywhere and everywhere. It was exciting. It was a lot of fun and very different.
Hmm. So now I'll ask you, where are you today? And
I am
how is life?
I'm I am at home, and as we speak, we have
Hmm.
a great granddaughter that is downstairs that
Oh.
we're taking care of. We have a couple of great grandkids.
Hmm.
One is just turned 6 years old,
Wow.
and he's at a school that's a few blocks from us. And this one is 2.5 years old, and we take care of her a couple times a week. So.
Hmm.
That brings us a lot of pleasure and joy, and to be able to be around family.
Man.
And I played, I suck at it, but I play golf.
Uh-oh. What's your handicap, or is that not a public
Too
public?
high to say publicly.
So,
But
well, so you know what's coming next after all of that. Um, Someone just knocked on your door where you're sitting now. In walks 18-year-old Chuck Williams. What are you saying to that guy?
well, to enjoy to enjoy your experiences, to make the most of opportunity, to not be afraid to make mistakes, but to learn about those mistakes, and to not be afraid to believe in yourself and to take a leap of faith when called for. Be
You think he?
be smart about it,
Mm-hmm.
but not be afraid.
You think he'd listen?
Well, I don't know if I would call myself a knucklehead at the time, but I think I would have had to been told that a few times before it really sank in.
It, Chuck, I appreciate this guy. Thank you, man. I really
Uh,
do appreciate you.
well, thank you. This has been fun.
Yes, sir.